Well, we're back for another wonderful episode. I'm curious, do we have any people pleasers out there? Do we have any people that get anxious sometimes when it comes to dating and relationships? Or maybe you're just not finding that person that fits you. Well, guess what? We're diving in today and we've got Trevor in the house. Hello, Trevor.
Glad to be here, Junie.
Get ready to help a lot of people because so many women struggle with people pleasing and not really owning their autonomy, their self, their ability to just be relaxed and attract somebody that really fits them and so many things. So I'm just gonna tell them about you. Let's just dive right in because who is this Trevor guy? How is he gonna help me? And he's a guy. What does he know? Well, he's here for a reason and he knows a lot. Trevor Justice is a relationship coach who specializes in anxious attachment relationship skills, as well as the author of Attract, Love, and Respect 5 Ways to Be Valued in Your Relationships. Who doesn't want to be valued, right? Trevor empowers people pleasers and anxiously attached people to feel more secure, become priorities to their partners, and get as much as they give. Let's all take a breath into that one. I was telling Trevor before we started, I'm like, I'm reading your whole bio because it's just so good. It continues on. For years, Trevor felt disheartened in his relationships. With guidance from the Ford Institute and Center for Spiritual Living, he discovered and changed the unconscious signals he was projecting. He became the man his soulmate was looking for. And in 2020, he met her. And today he's happily engaged and living proof that his methods work. And this man has been around. He's been on CBS, NBC, Fox. This guy has it going on. Let's dive in because they're like, all right, enough, Junie. Come on, let's hear from this guy. So you identify as somebody who has struggled with the attachment style of anxiousness, would you say?
Yeah, so I've been in a relationship, a wonderful relationship for a little over 3 years. Um, and before that, I dated a lot of different women over the years. Those who really showed up for me and were consistent and communicative, I never felt anxious with them.
Yeah.
There were some women I dated, and just like men who you might date, who didn't reply in a timely manner, or right, you'd wonder what's going on and you'd worry. And if you feel like that, if you feel disappointed or frustrated or taken for granted, like I sometimes did, that probably means you have an anxious attachment style.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had other people talk about anxious attachment styles before, and they've all been women. So I love that right off the bat, we're like, oh, men can have this too,
Yep.
and that there are different styles. We're not going to go into all the styles, but can you just tell our listeners and watchers what are the styles just real quickly so they have a sense?
I mean, the main ones are secure, anxious, and avoidant.
Yep.
Now I'm going to oversimplify this. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Definitely.
there's a number of things that can affect your attachment style, but the biggest one is your childhood and how your parents or caretakers showed up for you. So if you felt like if you cried and nobody came, you'd be more likely to have a fear of abandonment, and that would lead to an anxious attachment style. On the other hand, if you're a toddler wanting some freedom and independence to explore and you felt smothered and trapped and on a leash, then you'd be more likely to become avoidant, where you really value independence and having your space and autonomy, and you could feel smothered or overwhelmed by your partner asking for too much closeness and togetherness. Secure is when you have the perfect parenting or upbringing, right? And you neither you're not worried about abandonment, but you also don't push away closeness and intimacy.
Yeah. Oh gosh. The wheels are turning. I actually dated somebody who was an avoidant and literally was on a leash. I mean, he literally was on a leash. His mother put him on a leash
All right.
because he was all over the place. And
Wow.
yeah. I didn't realize that it goes beyond metaphor. And I also know his mother was definitely somebody who did smother him. And then of course we know that avoidance and anxious attachment styles tend to find each other. Why is that? Why is that? It sounds like a torturous idea.
Well, avoidant people don't generally form relationships with other avoidant people because there's no glue to hold them together. They both want space and autonomy.
Yeah, true.
And avoidant people are more likely to recirculate into the dating pool because they don't stay in relationships as long. So, for us, if whether we're secure or anxious, we're going out, if we're still single and dating, a lot of the people who are in the dating pool and not in a long-term relationship are avoidant folks.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. It really does. Um, so people pleasing. Connect the dots for us around why somebody who might be anxious or has had some abandonment issues in the past might be really big in the I better do everything right for them. Is it just because they're so terrified of being left?
Yeah. I think someone can be a people pleaser without necessarily being anxiously attached. It
Okay.
could be both, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so let's start with what anxious people do. If you're anxiously attached in something, if you feel disappointed, frustrated, something rubs you the wrong way, you tend to make it mean there's something wrong with you, or you're not good enough,
Mm,
you don't matter, you're not lovable. And those are the four most common shadow beliefs, which I imagine from listening to your other shows, you've shared with your listeners.
yeah.
But when your partner doesn't show up for you, for example, we had an anxiously attached client named Teresa, and she was dating a guy who consistently broke dates, and she would always make it mean not that he was a bad boyfriend or not that he couldn't meet her needs or was incompatible. She always saw it as a reflection of her self-worth. She always made it mean that she wasn't good enough, that he must have found someone else, that he's dating her instead, right?
Hmm.
And that's the tendency of anxious people. Through our work together, one of the exercises, which I can share with your listeners if you like, is to separate what happened from the meanings that she was making about it, right? And then to reframe that by coming up with a different meaning. So
Yeah.
whereas she was making it mean, I'm not good enough, he must have found someone else. And she had done that her whole life. But finally, she was able to see, okay, wait a sec. This man was only in love once in his life. Okay, and these are older folks that maybe she doesn't want me to share her age, but uh, they both had plenty of relationships before. This man had only been in love once in his life, and had never really been able to open up and commit to someone since then. So that's one of the things that she listed when reframing the meanings. Another was he is a single dad who has full custody of his kids and is running a business and lives an hour away. So this really had nothing to do with her, and yet she was making it mean that. So as we listed the reasons why it was about him and not about her, and how he's actually been like this with other girlfriends.
Yep.
Wow, wait a sec. It had nothing to do with her
Right.
self-worth.
It's not me. There's some other things going on here. And yet she went right to the something must be wrong. I must be falling short.
Right.
I don't matter enough because he's not paying attention or driving to see me on a regular basis.
Mm. Yeah, so we tend to settle because we're afraid of rocking the boat,
Yep.
afraid of making waves. And so we smooth things over without really expressing our needs. And unfortunately, when you do that, other people, your partner learns to prioritize what they want and not what you want. And they are more likely to take you for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Vicious cycle there. Hmm.
what I learned in my own experience and what has also helped my clients a lot is to understand that keeping your needs to yourself is more likely to have you be taken for granted. When you express your needs, even though, so the reason we don't express needs is we fear upsetting our partner more than we respect ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. So how,
Uh,
so what do you, so we both work with shadow. We both do different things around this. I'm curious, how do you break the cycle? And I know that you and I both have this tendency, this disposition, and just like you, same as you, when I was with a very secure, giving, present partner,
yeah.
I didn't have any of these issues. But when I had the avoidant who would just leave me in the middle of a conversation or the heat of a challenge, or if I asked for my needs to be met, I would get judged for it and have challenge with that. And same, the same language that you used
Mhm.
in my past, I used it too about not making waves, not wanting to rock the boat,
Right.
because I used to have such a deep, I'm not good enough, and I didn't have that respect for my own needs as well. So
Mhm.
I know that it's been a healing journey for me and continues to be. I still need to work it sometimes. What have you found to be some of the golden nuggets that help people heal this and shift this?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two parts. There's internally changing your self-worth, right? But there's also demonstrating your value in moments of truth. So there's one thing to stand in the mirror and say affirmations, right? But where the rubber meets the road is when you're interacting with your partner and something rubs you the wrong way. And now that's a moment of truth. You have an opportunity to demonstrate your value and be valued more because people value you as much as you value yourself.
All right, say that again. Boom, 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 boom. Woo, woo,
Yeah.
woo. Hot
People
topic.
people value you as much as you value yourself.
Exactly.
So in that moment of truth, if you say, look, when you do such and such, I feel this way, and what I need is whatever, right? When you do that, uh, one of two things will happen. Okay, if the person really is unable and unwilling to meet your needs, you're going to find out, and that's what you want to be finding out early in a relationship, not 3 months, 6 months down the road because you've been suppressing your needs the whole time.
Another woo, woo, woo. I mean,
Yeah.
I usually don't send out the alarms here. This is the first time fresh off the press. But what you're saying is so huge. Don't walk on eggshells and then wait to find out this person really isn't going to step up and listen to you and hold the space for you and respect you. Like, we want to know this sooner than later.
Yes, absolutely. And being afraid to express your needs or rock the boat just has you be growing more and more attached, and
Yeah.
it makes it harder and harder to take a risk that might result in a breakup, right? So do it early, because so if this is an avoidant person or someone who's just, let's say, overcommitted, has too many responsibilities or commitments or obligations, you want to know that early.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that can happen is that when you start showing that you respect yourself more than you fear upsetting your partner will also respect you more and also treat you as more, well, the judgment is that they'll treat you as more of a priority. Really what it is they're going to value you as much as you value yourself.
Exactly. That's so beautiful. And you talk about the X factor that determines who you attract and how you're treated. Would you say that's kind of what we're talking about here, and how you're being and how you respect yourself is the X factor when it comes to who's going to actually see you for who you are, or is that something different?
Your X factor is your beliefs about your worth.
There you go.
Yeah, so if you so a lot of us, when we were kids, we were shamed, we were hurt, we were rejected, something happened, and we made a meaning. I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. I don't matter. And then we looked for evidence. You know this, 'cause you've done the shadow work as well. We
Yeah.
look for evidence, right, to prove that it's true and validate that. And if things happen that are opposite, right, that would argue for the opposite, we don't really give it much credence. So where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so then that's your shadow belief. And throughout life, one coping mechanism is that we try to prove that that's not true about us. So when I was a kid, some things happened that led me to believe I don't matter. And I talk about this in my book. And but as a coping mechanism, I did so many things in life to prove that I matter, right? I bought real estate, I started and sold companies, I released albums, I did all these things to be significant, to
Hmm.
prove that I matter. And but it was a coping mechanism. And deep down, I still had that belief. And that is what unconsciously attracted partners, or women that I dated, who reflected back to me that belief about myself.
Mm.
And when I accepted the things about myself that I was hiding or afraid to show or share, it changed. It changed who showed up in my life.
That makes so much sense. So much sense. I'm always talking to my clients about being themselves and working on their ability to open, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, in a safe way. Because that's the challenge is if the belief is, well, if I share too vulnerably, I might be judged, I might be criticized, and all the things that they experience. And when we are able to open and be honest, it pulls people in. And then it also gives them permission, I find, to do the
Mm.
same. And I was actually, I'm going on a hot date. I told you this. I called Trevor earlier. I'm like, can you come on 15 minutes early? I was invited for this unbelievably unusual experience with some. It's a long story, but it's a once in a lifetime. Like, oh my god, I have to do this. And I don't, gosh, I just got all excited. I got thrown off with what I was saying. Oh my goodness. I completely lost my train of thought there. What were we just talking about? My goodness. That
Well,
first on the air there. I think we're cutting this part. Where were we?
I know that one of the things you've talked about in your other shows is vulnerability. And so that goes into what I call our magic request formula. It's a piece of it. Um, and we also were just talking about how changing your shadow belief can change who shows up, right? If it's all right, I just would like to finish the story about Teresa because this happened for her.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah, so she summoned the courage to express her needs, and her boyfriend still was not able or willing to meet them.
Yeah.
By the end of our work together, a man had showed up who was reflecting back her new beliefs about herself, who was going out of his way to keep his word, who is treating her as a priority, and who she described as perfect for her. So, and it's all because of what you call, or I call, the X factor, which is your beliefs about what you are worth and what you deserve.
Yeah, so good, so good. And that brings me to another question for you because a lot of times people are afraid of asking for their needs to be met because something happened in the relationship and they're afraid of rocking the boat. We've already said this, but they're afraid of a reaction from
Mm.
that person. And, I talk with my clients about how to have these challenging conversations sometimes without um, rocking the boat or having that person, fly off the handle. I'm curious, how do you help people share vulnerably what they need and express themselves in a way that the other person can have some empathy for them, that they can
Absolutely.
actually show up and go, oh, wait a second, this person is not making me wrong. They're asking for something.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we teach on our magic request formula, which is in my book. And I can share a couple of steps for you.
Yeah,
In
please do. Yeah.
so you shared that you recommend that people be more transparent and vulnerable, right? And also, you were just asking, how can you evoke empathy instead of making your partner feel wrong or pushed away when you ask for what you want?
Yeah.
A lot of times, the way that we were brought up to talk about what we need is to use morality, to say, you should or shouldn't do this. That was right, that was wrong. This is good, this is bad, right? So I've heard people say things like, I feel that wasn't sensitive. That's not a feeling, that's a judgment about what the other person is doing.
Yeah.
Or I feel that you should treat me as more of a priority. Again, that's really not a feeling, and what it's doing is you're making the other person wrong, which is could make them feel defensive. It could make them feel pushed away. It can make them close up. Right? There's a lot of it's not going to get the reaction that you actually want. So, in order to evoke empathy, we teach this magic request formula. And obviously, the final step is to ask for what you want. But some of the preliminary steps are to name whatever emotion you are having about making the request. So let's say that you and I were in some kind of relationship, and I said, there's something that I need, and I've been afraid to talk to you about, or there's something I feel nervous to bring up, but I really need to. So I can feel more appreciated.
Yep.
How would you feel hearing something like that?
Right. That, saying, oh, they're nervous or they're scared. Or you're curious, leaning in, not defensive, leaning in. What's happening?
Right. Yeah. So that's the first step, is to share the emotion you have about the request. So it could be, I feel nervous. I feel worried. I feel anxious. I feel reluctant. And that's the first thing that helps to evoke empathy and open the person and evoke their compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then, you can bring up the situation. Now, here it's really important to separate the facts that anybody else could notice from your story or judgment about what that means, right? So, an example is our client, Grace, was she'd been dating a guy for 2 years, then broke up, and then 6 months later got together and realized she needed help. So she put us in her corner. Um, he was not in daily contact. He traveled a lot. When they went to parties, sometimes he would just leave her alone and go and mingle with his buddies without her. Um, and there was some other ways, that she was feeling unsafe in the relationship.
Yeah.
So um, in this case, as we worked on the magic request formula around the party example, it was, there's something that I feel nervous to bring up. Um, okay, that's the first step. When we're at a party and we're together, I feel safe. I feel excited to be with you. I feel happy. But when you go in, I'm by myself and you go mingle with your friends, without me, I feel alone and I feel disappointed. Now notice that that's sharing very vulnerably about her feelings, not about judgments. She
Yeah.
doesn't say, I feel that you're inconsiderate, or I feel that's not sensitive, or I feel that you should know better, right?
Yeah.
Those would be judgments about what making him wrong, and that would make him get defensive. But by sharing it in this more vulnerable way, she evoked more empathy. And by the end of our work together, not only was he staying with her at parties, but he was in daily contact even when he was traveling. And because they had a hard time having alone time because he traveled so much, she asked for, and he treated her to a romantic trip to Italy. And then sometime after our work, he co-signed a mortgage so she could become a homeowner.
Wow.
And that's all. Well, I shouldn't say it's all, but the magic request formula was a big part of that.
I love that. And I teach something similar. And what I love about it is it's revealing you. It's
Yeah.
sharing what's going inside of you. It's not about pointing a finger or making the other person wrong. It's about going, this is what goes on inside of me.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
this is what I need some support with.
mhm.
And can you help me with that? And when it's somebody that really cares or is invested in you and wants to, be there for you and or whatever, um, that they will try and show up and not get as defensive as if you drop some shoulds or use or
Right.
blame. You always do this, versus right
Right.
that like ah. So I love that. I'm glad you shared a couple of steps, and I love that you have your book, and I know you have a special gift for our listeners and watchers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So our main website is attractloveandrespect.com. And that's where you can read success stories and find out about how we help people, um, read about retreats. We also set up for your listeners a special gift called Change Who You Attract and How You're Treated. And the special website is attractlovegift.com. Just go there and you can download the PDF. You can even request a free audiobook. And if it's all right, I'll just share a few things that we cover in that PDF.
Sure, go
That's
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So what you'll learn in Change Who You Attract and How You're Treated is why common dating advice attracts the wrong prospects and what to do instead, why you may not be valued in relationships even if you're wealthy or successful or attractive, how to put out the right signals to attract love and respect, and how to demonstrate high value in those moments of truth that affect how you'll be treated in the future.
Beautiful. That sounds so valuable in so many ways. I encourage you all to grab that. And the links will be in the show notes. So don't worry if you didn't catch it. Trevor, thank you. This was spectacular. You really hit on some huge pieces. We could talk for hours about this. And seriously, I'm like
Happy
thinking,
to
oh
do so.
my God, I have so many other questions.
Uh,
So maybe you'll have to come back and we'll dive in again. Meanwhile, thank you for your time. I really appreciated it.
you're very welcome. Glad to be here.
All right, that's it for today. Another episode coming next week. Mwah. One more thing before you go. Have you taken my Discover Your Love Avatar quiz? It's a 2-minute quiz that can help you not only know your strengths, your superpower because you have one, also identify some of your blind spots, some of the things that might be having you in your fear, having you behaving in ways that aren't in alignment with your highest self, the way you want to be when it comes to dating and relationships. And it'll also help you discover why maybe the stars haven't lined up for you yet. Bottom line is, you take this 2-minute quiz, you get a full report in your email with details on how to move forward in next level love, whether you want a partner or not. So you can go to midlifeloveoutloud.com/love quiz. The link is in the show notes as well. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the station, I'm going to encourage you to do that too, so you don't miss any episodes. And I hope you got a ton out of today's. See you next week. Mwah.